They say there's a ritual only a handful of Freemasons have ever seen, one you were not allowed to refuse. I'm the man who said no. For years I believed every degree, every oath, every candle-lit ceremony inside the lodge was nothing more than symbolic pageantry, allegory, a way for men to feel closer to truth without ever touching it. But then the letter came. It wasn't delivered by post. I found it before dawn, slipped beneath my apartment door. Thick black paper edges burnt the wax seal, pressed with an emblem I'd never seen before. The square and compass, but inverted the number 33, scorched into the wax, instead of embossed. The heat had melted through to the wood. Inside, a strip of parchment the length of my hand, blank except for 2 words, handwritten in iron ink. Midnight. Come alone. No signature, no greeting. At first I thought it was a prank from one of the brothers, a theatrical invitation to some mock ceremony. But when I brought the letter near the light, the fibers of the parchment shimmered faintly, like veins pulsing under skin. That was when unease began to settle in. I tried to ignore it the entire day, but around 11 that night, I found myself standing at the edge of the old district, coat collar up, rain biting through the fabric. The lodge's door, heavy oak, carved with symbols I'd memorized long ago, stood slightly open, a single line of candlelight seeping through the crack. No sound, no voices. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was wrong, too still. Even the usual scent of wax and cedar polish was replaced by something metallic, old stone, rust and dust disturbed after years. The chairs were gone, the altar bare except for a single candle placed on the floor at the center of the checkerboard tiles. Its flame flickered in a steady rhythm, like breathing. That's when I noticed the footprints, bare feet, wet, leading from the door to the trapdoor near the east wall. I hadn't even realized the basement hatch was unsealed. The footprints descended into the dark. Part of me wanted to leave, to pretend I'd never come. But something deeper, older, compelled me downward. Maybe loyalty, maybe curiosity, maybe the same hunger that brought me to Freemasonry in the first place, the promise that hidden knowledge waited behind every forbidden door. The stairs groaned under my weight. Below, faint chanting echoed, not words but tones, like a heartbeat played through stone. The chamber opened wider than I remembered, the walls slick with condensation. On the floor, arranged in perfect geometry, were symbols drawn in a fine golden powder that caught the candlelight from above and scattered it into shifting shapes. 12 figures stood in a circle. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Their faces were hooded, hands clasped behind their backs. In the center, an empty space, exactly my height and reach. One of them raised a hand. The chanting stopped. Silence, heavy and waiting. Then a voice, calm, deep, too familiar to place, spoke from the shadows. "Brother, you've been called because you still seek the truth." I tried to speak, but the sound barely left my throat. "Tonight," the voice continued, "you will witness the work beyond symbol. You may refuse, but if you refuse, you will remember." The candle nearest to me went out, as if the flame itself inhaled. My reflection in the golden powder distorted, stretching upward like a shadow no longer connected to me. The voice spoke again. "Step forward, if you accept illumination." And that was when I felt it, a pulse beneath the floor, slow and deliberate, like the earth itself breathing. My hands trembled. The figures around me didn't flinch. I could feel every heartbeat in my body pounding against a silence too thick to break. Something inside whispered, "Don't." So I didn't move. The voice hesitated, only for a moment, before saying quietly, "Then you have already begun." Every candle in the chamber flared white, blinding. Heat hit my face like a furnace. I stumbled backward toward the stairs, covering my eyes, and when I looked again, the figures were gone, the circle of gold untouched, the air heavy with something electric and wrong. I ran. Up the stairs, out into the rain, gasping as if I'd surfaced from drowning. The street was empty, the city silent. Behind me, the lodge door clicked shut on its own. I stood there for a long time, breathing, heart hammering, telling myself it was just theatre, some hidden ritual I wasn't meant to see. But then I looked down. My hands were dusted in that same golden powder. It shimmered faintly, even under the streetlight, like something alive trying to move. They said it was a ceremony to open the mind. I whisper now when I try to sleep. But all I could feel that night was that something was watching. They stood in a circle, faces hidden, and told me this ritual would strip away illusion. The illusion, I realized, was choice. I didn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the 12 figures frozen in silence, their candlelight pulsing like a heartbeat. The empty space in their circle waited for me, patient, breathing. When morning came, I found the golden powder still clinging to my palms. Soap did nothing. Water only spread it thinner, a faint shimmer that refused to fade. By the third day, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined it, until the knock came. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, the old Masonic rhythm. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only a wooden box sat on the floor, small enough to fit in one hand. It was carved with the same inverted square and compass ID seen on the wax seal, burned so deeply into the grain that the wood around it had blistered. Inside lay a single white glove, my own, from the last official meeting I'd attended, folded around a thin strip of parchment. 4 words, written in the same black iron ink. You left the circle incomplete. I told myself it was theatre, some elaborate reminder that I'd missed a gathering. But when I lifted the glove, the inside was damp, metallic, the faint smell of blood. That night, curiosity betrayed me again. By 11, I was standing in front of the lodge. The rain that had been falling all evening stopped the moment I reached the steps. The door was already open, drifting on its hinges with a slow, hollow groan. Inside, everything looked the same as before, except the trapdoor in the eastern wall now gaped open, a ladder descending into flickering orange light. The hum from below was unmistakable, that low, rhythmic tone, not quite music, not quite voice. I told myself I'd look for 5 seconds and leave. 5 seconds became 10. Then the candlelight caught my eyes and I was already climbing down. The basement air was thick with smoke and something else, ozone, the tang that comes before lightning. The chamber stretched wider than I remembered, the walls damp, the stones sweating under the heat. 12 figures again, motionless, waiting. The geometric circle on the floor was back, but the gold dust had been replaced with something darker, heavier. The smell was iron. At the center stood the Grand Master. For the first time his hood was down. His skin looked too pale for candlelight, almost translucent, and when he turned, I saw that his eyes caught the glow like polished metal. He raised one hand. The hum stopped. "Brother," he said quietly, "you were called because you still seek the truth." His voice was calm, almost gentle, the way one speaks to a frightened animal. I swallowed. "You sent the letter?" He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the circle. "Step forward. The work awaits." The other figures shifted just enough for a narrow gap to open, leaving a space exactly my size at the southern point of the pattern. "Tonight," he said, "we transcend allegory. The symbols have served their purpose. You will see the architecture beneath." He turned toward an altar behind him. On it sat a brass bowl filled with liquid that wasn't quite liquid. It moved on its own, rippling between silver and crimson, the surface folding like slow fire. When the candlelight hit it, the reflections twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist, lines bending into circles, circles flattening into spirals. "You will mark your forehead," he said, "and speak the words we give you. Then the door will open." He lifted the bowl and held it out. The smell was wrong, sweet, metallic, alive. The surface pulsed in time with my heartbeat. Something deep inside me screamed to move back. "I won't," I said. The words came out hoarse, almost broken. The silence that followed was total. Even the flame stopped flickering. Then the Grand Master spoke again, so softly I almost missed it. "Then refusal itself will serve. The circle completes around absence." The others lowered their heads. A low vibration rose from the floor, first a hum, then a growl, like stone being dragged beneath the building. The pattern at my feet began to glow faintly red, where the dark substance touched the cracks. Heat climbed through the soles of my shoes. I stumbled backward, heart racing. "Refusal," he said, eyes burning gold, "is still participation. You cannot unsee the gate once your shadow has crossed it." The humming swelled until I felt it in my ribs. The symbols lit one by one, crawling across the floor like veins, igniting under skin. The hooded figures began to chant, not Latin anymore, but something older, rhythmic, carved from breath and pressure. When the Grand Master raised his hands, the candles flared and then blew out all at once. The darkness hit like a wave, thick and absolute. A sound came from beneath the stone, a scrape, a chain sliding through metal rings. The floor trembled. Something was under the chamber, moving. That was enough. I ran. The ladder shook under my hands, each rung slick with moisture. As I reached the top, a gust of air burst up from below, hot and foul, carrying a voice that wasn't quite human, whispering my name. The moment I stepped out, the trapdoor slammed shut behind me. The echo rolled through the hall and died. Outside, the city was silent. No wind, no traffic, just a heavy stillness pressing against my ears. When I looked back, the lodge's door eased itself closed, slow and deliberate, the latch sliding home with a soft click. I started walking. I don't remember the route home, only that every streetlight flickered as I passed beneath it. One flash, then darkness, then another, as if something invisible followed above me, keeping pace. By the time I reached my apartment, dawn had begun to pale the sky. I turned off my phone, sat on the floor, and told myself it was over. But around noon, the screen lit on its own. No number, no message thread, just one line of text across the black. "You have already begun." I pulled the battery out, threw the phone in a drawer, and sat in the quiet until night returned. That's when I saw it. The faint outline etched into my floorboards. A circle, thin, perfect, carved into the wood as if by heat. At its center, a smear of gold dust that shimmered when I breathed on it. I didn't remember tracking it in. I didn't remember kneeling there. But when I reached out, the dust slid toward my hand, as though drawn by something living beneath my skin. I wiped it away with a rag, then watched in disbelief as the pattern began to reform, grain by grain, right before my eyes. I thought walking out would end it, I whisper now when the nights grow too quiet, but the ritual followed me home. You can't run from a ritual. Once it starts, it's inside you. I stopped going to work a week after the message appeared. I told people I was sick, that I needed time. But the truth was simpler. Every time I tried to leave my apartment, the air outside felt wrong, thicker, slower. The sound of traffic dimmed as if I were underwater. And when I looked up at my own building from the street, I could swear the lights in my window flickered in that same rhythm. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. I started keeping a journal, trying to convince myself I was documenting delusions. It felt rational at first, but patterns began to form. I'd wake at exactly 3:33 a.m., no matter when I fell asleep. Every night, I'd hear the same faint noise from the walls. 3 knocks, pause, 3 again. It wasn't the neighbors. The building's old, sure, but plaster doesn't knock back in sequence. The smell came next, iron and smoke. Subtle at first, like the ghost of candlelight. By the 4th night, it filled the whole room. I tore the apartment apart looking for the source. Burnt wiring, pipes, anything. But when I lifted the rug in the living room, my stomach turned cold. Beneath it, the wooden floor had begun to darken. The circle I'd seen etched faintly into the boards before. It had deepened. The grooves were wider now, filled with something metallic that shimmered red under the lamplight. I touched it with the edge of a screwdriver. The metal hissed, not from heat, but reaction, like it recognized me. I stumbled back. The lamp flickered. Then every light in the apartment went out. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was breath, steady, deep, echoing from inside the walls. I don't remember falling asleep that night. I only remember waking on the floor, staring at the ceiling. There were marks above me, fingerprints, dozens of them, pressed into the paint. The pattern wasn't random. They curved into a spiral that ended exactly where my head had rested. That morning I left. I checked into a cheap motel near the edge of the city. No windows facing the street, no mirrors, just a single bulb and a lock that barely held. I thought distance would help, but when I pulled back the sheets, gold dust fell from the pillow. That's when I stopped pretending. This wasn't a haunting. This was continuation. The ritual hadn't ended in the lodge. It had migrated. It was alive, parasitic, using me as its vessel. For days I stayed inside that room, curtains closed, lights off. I could still feel the hum beneath the floor, like a heartbeat under concrete. When I finally dared to look in the mirror, something shimmered faintly across my forehead. I leaned closer. At first, I thought it was reflection, but no, it was beneath the skin. A faint golden line curved like a crescent, pulsing softly in time with my pulse. The mark they wanted me to draw. It was there. It had appeared without the bowl, without the chant, without my consent. That was when panic became something else, resignation. I needed answers. So I went back to the one person I thought I could trust. Brother Thomas, the oldest Mason I knew. He'd left the lodge years ago, called it too crowded with men who think they understand. He answered the door in silence, studying me like he'd been expecting the visit. His hands trembled as he motioned me in. The blinds were drawn, the house filled with the stale scent of books and wax. When I told him what had happened, he didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I finished, he asked only one question. "Did you refuse in the circle?" I nodded. He sighed. "Then you didn't refuse. You completed it." I must have looked confused because he stood, went to a drawer, and pulled out a leather-bound journal. Inside were pages of sketches, symbols I recognized, some I didn't. At the bottom of one page, a drawing. A man standing outside a circle of 12 hooded figures, his shadow touching the edge. "The 13th degree," Thomas whispered. "Not an advancement, a separation. You think they initiate by choice? No. They watch who resists. The ones who say no are the ones they keep." My throat went dry. "Keep how?" He closed the book. "The ritual doesn't need your permission. It needs your resistance. You gave it energy when you said no. That's how they bind the outer circle, the observers, the unseen keepers." Something crashed in the hallway before I could respond, a picture frame falling from the wall on its own. The air grew cold, the lamp dimmed. Thomas froze. "They found you," he whispered. "You shouldn't have come here." I backed toward the door, but he grabbed my arm. His hand was ice. "Go," he hissed, "and whatever you do, don't look back." I didn't argue. The hallway outside was darker than before, the air thick with static. Every step echoed too long, like the walls were stretching. I reached my car and slammed the door, trembling, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. When I looked up through the windshield, I froze. The street was empty except for one black car parked across from mine. In the driver's seat, a man in a dark suit. He didn't move, didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead. His window was rolled down halfway, and on the passenger seat sat an iron emblem, the same inverted square and compass that sealed my first letter. He lifted it slowly, just enough for me to see the faint red glow pulsing beneath it. Then he lowered it again. The car's headlights flashed once, and when my vision cleared, he was gone. The road was empty. The space where his car had been shimmered faintly with heat, like air above a flame. I drove until sunrise, until the city vanished in the rearview mirror, and all that was left was empty highway and fog. I didn't stop until the fuel light came on. When I finally stepped out to stretch my legs, I noticed something scrawled across the hood of my car in a film of golden dust. Circle unbroken. I stared at it until the wind began to blow it away, but even as it scattered, I could still see the faint pattern glowing underneath, burned into the paint. You can't run from a ritual, I whisper now when I think back to that night. Once it starts, it's inside you. You can only refuse once. After that, they decide for you. For 3 days I drove without sleep. Empty highways cut through fog, thick as milk, my headlights carving tunnels through it. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I had to keep moving. Gas stations blurred together. Coffee, static, silence. Each time I stopped, I checked the mirrors, and every time, something was off. Angles didn't match. Shadows lagged behind, and once, just once, I saw 12 silhouettes standing behind me in the glass, faces covered, waiting. I told myself it was exhaustion. Men lose their minds on less, but even exhaustion doesn't make the world start breathing with you. The air pulsed in rhythm, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, the same Masonic knock that had followed me since the night I refused. Streetlights blinked in time with it. My heart obeyed it. I wasn't running anymore. I was orbiting. By the 5th night, the hum came back. It began under the car, a vibration too deep to be mechanical, crawling through the steering wheel into my bones. I pulled over, stepped out, and still felt it beneath my feet, resonating through the asphalt like the earth itself was chanting. When I looked around, the horizon rippled, heatless, unreal. That's when I saw it. The sign ahead of me, half buried in weeds. The paint had peeled away, but I could still make out the words, Masonic Hall, 0.5 miles. I'd driven hundreds of miles from the city, yet somehow, impossibly, I had circled back. My breath fogged the glass as I whispered to myself, it can't be. But when I blinked, I saw candlelight flicker in the distance, small, steady, waiting. I should have turned around. Instead, I drove forward. Some part of me already knew the truth. You don't escape a circle by running along its edge. You escape by stepping into the center. The lodge stood exactly as I remembered it. Brick unweathered, door unrotted, as if time hadn't touched it. The oak entrance was wide open, the darkness behind it faintly gold. I killed the engine and sat for a long time, hands gripping the wheel, heart shaking the mirror. Then, as if on cue, every candle inside flared to life at once. The building exhaled light. I went in. The main hall smelled of cedar and wax again, freshly polished, immaculate. The air no longer felt abandoned. It felt prepared. The trapdoor in the east wall stood open, a staircase descending into the same amber glow that had haunted my dreams. I told myself this was the only way to end it, to face whatever waited below. The descent felt longer than before. Steps multiplied, walls stretched, the air grew warmer with every breath. When I reached the bottom, I froze. The chamber had changed. The mildew and stone were gone. In their place, marble walls veined with gold, carved symbols glowing faintly like veins beneath skin. The circle on the floor no longer painted, but inlaid. Metal fused to rock, pulsing like a heart. And standing at the far side of it was me. My reflection moved independently, eyes hollow, posture calm. It tilted its head in perfect opposition to mine, smiling faintly. Across its forehead shone the golden crescent that had appeared beneath my skin days before. "The circle closes," a voice said. The Grand Master stepped from the shadows, ageless, robed in white and gold. The 12 hooded figures followed, forming the ring once more. Their presence distorted the air, light bent around them. "You refused illumination," he said, his voice echoing from everywhere at once. "So the work claimed your shadow. Every refusal births its reflection." I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The hum pinned me in place, vibrating through marrow and thought alike. "Balance must be restored," he continued. "You will merge with what you cast away." The figure, my twin, stepped forward. Each footfall echoed twice, one in sound, one in my chest. The closer it came, the harder it became to breathe. The candles brightened until tears burned my eyes. I shouted for them to stop, but the Grand Master only raised his hand. "Fiat," he said. Light detonated. White fire consumed everything. There was no heat, no sound, just expansion like being stretched across eternity. In that light I saw fragments, faces, centuries, rituals repeated beneath mountains, and cathedrals, voices chanting my name in languages older than breath. I wasn't witnessing, I was becoming. Each fragment latched onto me, layering until I couldn't tell which memories were mine. The circle wasn't a symbol, it was a pattern of consciousness, recycling itself through willing and unwilling alike. The pain wasn't physical, it was identity shredding. Every refusal before mine screamed through me, the architects, the scholars, the heretics, all of us stitched into one unending confession. Then, silence. I woke on my knees, in the same chamber. The light had dimmed to gold again, the Grand Master and the 12 were gone. Only 2 figures remained, me and the thing that had been my reflection. It smiled gently and reached out its hand. I didn't move, but my arm lifted anyway, pulled by strings of invisible force. When our palms met, the floor erupted in a blinding flare. The circle sealed itself with a hiss like molten metal in water. When the light faded, only one of us remained standing. I can't tell you which one. I remember walking out of the lodge as dawn painted the sky grey. Birds sang, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. The hum was gone. The streets were quiet. For a moment, peace felt real. Then people began to appear. Commuters, shopkeepers, strangers. Every one of them turned as I passed, eyes glinting gold beneath the sun. Some smiled, polite, almost reverent. Others simply nodded, acknowledging something invisible. When I caught my reflection in a window, it looked normal, until it blinked a fraction of a second after I did. I pressed my hand to the glass. The reflection's hand stayed still. Then it whispered, though its lips didn't move. "The circle is unbroken." I stumbled back, heart hammering. The words echoed from every window, every metallic surface, until the whole street hummed with it. A soundless chant vibrating in sunlight. That's when I understood. The ritual hadn't ended. It had expanded. I was no longer outside the circle or within it. I was the circle, and the world had joined me. Refusal wasn't resistance, it was contagion. I don't know how long I've been walking since then. Days, years. Time folds differently now. Sometimes I pass people whose eyes flicker gold for a moment before fading back to human color. Sometimes I hear the knock at my door, though I have no home left to answer. At night, when everything is still, I feel the light stirring under my skin again, faint and patient, waiting for someone else to say no. Because that's how it spreads. Through refusal, through curiosity, through men like me who believe they can walk away. They say initiation brings enlightenment, I whisper now to whoever finds this recording. But I've seen the light, and it never turns off.